So that like
sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. So we all know like we need happiness, but some people they just think like the money and fame bring them happiness, but those are things just impermanent. And then they try to work for it, and then one day those fame and money is gone, and then they experience suffering. That's and then they really into that one, and they think that they want to have a happiness again, and then they try to achieve money and fame, things like that, and then they gonna be into the cycle of on suffering, and which means that one is birth and rebirth. But with the people who have who are knowledgeable, and then without the ignorant, they know that happiness just comes from the inside. With it's not money, not fame, nothing else like car or a lot of things, so that they try to be like they would like to learn and then to improve themselves to reach enlightenment more than just get something like fame, house, car. Those are just impermanent.
Thank you. Yeah, and you know more about this. Can you want to elaborate about this? We discussed before, right? And the difference between ignorance and wisdom, right?
Yes, thầy. Nam mô Di Phật. Kính chào thầy. Yes, we talk about this many times. That's part of the fundamental belief and also a practice of Buddhism is that we as humans lack the wisdom, and that's why lack the wisdom because we ignorant. Not that we're stupid. I mean, we're ignorant and we do not know what is impermanence and what is everlasting. Nothing's everlasting. So as we learn about Buddhism and we recognize more and more of things that are what is changing, constantly changing, and never stay in one moment itself. So there's no, eventually there's nothing that really lasts forever. So if we try to cling on things that are what we think is last forever, for example, what Chloe was talking about, famous, big house, big cars, fame, title, all that. We climb the ladder of successive America, corporate America. We push other people down so that you achieve something that we think that is the best, ultimate, and everlasting. But if we reflect on it, even when we are old, we get older, we die, we pass, our hair gets grayer, our money, when we use to spend them all. Some people are that, William is talking about, we have money, but that's not last forever either. When you lost in the stock market, it's all gone. People are like unhappy. When you go to a big bar at night, you're happy, but then you go home, it's empty. To us, it's something that we can find inner ourselves that is not clinging to things that are materialistic, and so on and so forth. And that will make us less prone to suffering and desire more of things that are not always belong to us all the time. It would change. So if we realize that, then I think that that's the wisdom in life. And that's when the happiness, as long as we realize that moment that we realize, things always change, pain or suffering, then it will help us in our daily life. For me, example, talk about this, but sometimes there are things in life that happen to me. If I realize that is just the way life is, and don't be sad on it, don't sit on it, don't cling on it, let it go. If you let it go, then I really do think so. That moment that I felt that way, then I feel relief of the pain or the suffering that I felt, and the thought of happiness is just as you go through that door. That is the happiness that moment, and the whatever you feel afterward, lasts longer and hopefully forever. That's why I think in the practice of Buddhism, in recognizing things will not always be the same, and impermanence, and that will help me a long way in my daily practice Buddhism. Thank you, Thầy.
Thank you. And yeah, let me summarize. You follow now, Becca? You follow now?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, let me summarize here. The first one, the Buddha said that ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. The first one, the truth suffering. The second one is, we talk about, right? The co-suffering. The third is the cessation and stopping the suffering. The last one is the path, how to stop. So the first one is so important that we need to recognize, like when you go to see doctor, right? The doctor asks, what happening? You say, oh, I have stomachache, I have a headache. Basically, we have two types of sufferings, physical and mental. Physical suffering, we born, we get older, we get some type of illnesses, and one day we have to go. But what happened if we don't accept that? When we're sick, oh no, I can accept I'm sick. We create more suffering. Two layers of suffering. The first one is physical. Let's say I have stomach. Yes, that's physical suffering, right? And the second suffering is I don't accept that. I fight with that. That's the second layer of suffering. Because I don't accept, I reject that. But if we accept that, we just have only one layer of suffering. The first one, right? So for that, for physical and for mentality, stress, anxiety, depression, right? Becca, we talk a lot in our mindfulness class, right? That's what we have. And basically, we have two types, physical and mental. Of course, when we talk about the well, we talk about the material. This is more than that. But in general, the physical and the mental suffering that we have to deal with. If we don't accept that, we stress out. We don't accept that, we depressed. We create more suffering mentally for ourselves.
So that's how you work with craving and aversion.
Yeah. So that's why if we recognize us, yes, that's the wisdom. If we don't recognize that, ignore it there, because we try to reject or we try to fight, whether it's just related to our body or our mind. That's what it here is, not knowing suffering, not knowing the original or the cause suffering, the cause suffering right here in that cycle too. I talk about the next one. We talk about the craving. We talk about that later on. Not know the way that. The third one is when we talk about suffering. Another side of the coin is the happiness. When we understand that, we become happiness. When we accept, yes, we're sick physically, that's okay. We calm our mind, even our body is sick, right? And when we recognize that we stress out a lot, you just accept that and calm our mind, right? Otherwise, if we still fight for that, right? If we reject that, no, I'm not sick. No, I'm not stressed out. No, I don't have any jealousy. The more we deny, right, reject, the more suffering we cause for ourselves and others. So that's why that talk about ignorance here, ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. And the next one we talk about the Eightfold Path. That's what the Buddha mentioned about how we counteract with those suffering. You follow now, right? It's understandable. That's why that's the big word. So ignorance is the foundation, the basic of our suffering. So here we follow this standard of suffering and happiness. Not we don't follow on this the standard of poor or rich, unintelligent or intelligent, but we base everything on the suffering and happiness. We base on that scale, right? A different scale from other things. Right? Okay, so that's what here. That's why, and like William mentioned about the base of that again is just the attachment to the self, right? But in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, why Buddha say that the five aggregates, we talk about that later on, that they are not real self, but in Buddhist tradition, in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, we talk about the pure nature the Buddha nature. That's the one we want to activate, to live with, instead of living with this, instead of attaching to this physical body, instead of attaching to our thinking. You follow now, right? Yeah. So that's one here. Ignorance of the truth, stuff and so forth here. You follow me, right, Becca? It's easy to understand now.
Yes, now it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
How makes sense to you?
So basically, all of our suffering comes from the ignorance of things that we don't know yet. And if we're able to discover what it is that is causing the suffering rather than closing off and building on that suffering, then we're able to only have the first layer of suffering that we can't do anything about. It's just life, but we don't cause ourselves to suffer more. Is that right?
You work with the students. Well, what happened when you when you know that they stress out so much? How could you help them to calm their mind out when you know that they stress out so much?
It depends. I suppose I could find a way that would best help them in that time. I might not be able to fix it, but I can make it a little bit better for the future.
How?
By giving them ideas or teaching them how to do something on their own so they don't make that same mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Ben, you follow that, right, Ben?
Yes.
Yeah. In our meditation class, right, Glory? So how could we have people? Now we talk about this week. We talk about mindfulness in business, right? Right. It is if the boss doesn't know how to handle their own stress, right? It would do a lot of chaos to the employees, right? Yeah. Glory, you want to say about that?
Yeah, so like mindfulness is helpful in business for both employers and employees. Like if the boss, or I mean like if the, as a boss, if they are like mindless, they take everything personally, and then for example, like if the employees, there's one day they on the schedule, and then they're supposed to work on that day, but in the morning they send the message saying like they are not able to work because they are sick, they have something to take care of more important. And then if the boss like it's not mindfulness, they don't accept it, and then they get angry, there's something else gonna, like they're gonna message the employee saying like you are bad, you are not good, and then there's the chance for the employee to quit the job, and then at the same time the boss gonna be short-handed. The service is not good, the management is not good, so the teamwork is not good, so it cannot provide the customer the good service, and then it's gonna affect the business. But if the boss is mindful, have an understanding for the employees, but at the same time have to tell them they are important, so try to make up if possible, and then they try to solve the problem in the gentle way, it's going to be better, so both sides going to be understand for each other, and then make the boss and then the employees have the good connection. It's how the teamwork, the relationship and the people is better, the teamwork work better, so they can give the better service to the customer. It's gonna bring up the business. Yeah, so I think for mindfulness we should pay attention to that moment when things happen. We try to we have to understand the cause of the situation, accept it, and then try to find the solution more than react to that. So it's help people to people not experience suffering, like got angriness, and then especially if in the morning you got that message, and then you start angry the whole day, you're gonna be angry, it's gonna affect your mental health. And then somehow it's like if people doesn't have like good control for themselves, they might have the mental health gonna affect their physical health as well. So I think like the mindfulness help people to accept things. to see things like everything is not permanent. So to try to respond to them instead of reacting to the circumstance.
So when your student have, let's say, test stress, test anxiety, how could you help them out there? How? How could you help them when they have so much anxiety before they walk into the room to take a test?
One of the things that I do with kids, I don't know if it's helpful or not, is a lot of times they get stressed out because they're worried about their grade, and how that's going to affect. And I always kind of have the conversation like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, if you fail this test, do you think I'm not going to let you try again? Or, you know, as long as you're learning, we're going to make this work. Like, I'm here to help you learn. And if I give you the test and you don't pass it, and I don't do anything with that, then I'm not doing my job, right? So it's always this sort of like convincing them that like the idea in their head is just like the end of the world, that that's not accurate, that that's not what's going to happen. And just kind of that de-stresses them a little bit. Make it easier.
Especially college student, right? The junior and senior, they really mean about their grade, right? Because it may affect their GPA and how they go to have an interview to have a job. But for you, how about your students so little?
For littles, they tend to put their emotions in 3 buckets. Like I'm happy, I'm sad, or I'm mad. And so they don't understand the nuances of those emotions. So when we're sad, we can think about ways to make ourselves feel better. When we're mad, we have to stop everything we're doing, breathe. Sometimes they just need to take some time because they can't regulate themselves. So we have to stop, breathe, do something physical, get that energy out, that whatever they're feeling out before they can talk about it, or before we can slow down and be mindful and take our time.
Yeah. So your children, they don't have test anxiety yet, or too young, right? So how could they? So most time they have some kind of anxiety. You tell them to sit down, or they recognize much with that at young age.
They do. I mean, especially if they do something wrong, you know, they'll have anxiety, or they have something coming up that they've not done before, they'll have anxiety with that.
Yeah. Becca, you follow that, right? That's we talked about test anxiety in our class before, right? Again, if they come up and ask you, how could you help me out? I have a lot of anxiety before I take a test. How could you help them out?
I would tell them if they have time before the test, they can possibly do some like mindfulness walking around their campus or their school if they're able to. Just trying to find something where they're able to find like a calm moment before they have to do the test.
One important thing is that they need to recognize the expectation that causes the anxiety. Is that right? Expectation of having good grade, an A and so forth. But what happened after they saw the test back and they have only B or C, they could be frustrated. So that's what they relate to ignorance here. If they understand, I try my best, I study hard, I try my best, that's all. But if they put the expectation ahead of times before they do things, that's ignorance there.
With the uncertainty of
uncertainty, yeah, because who knows? Because it depend upon the test, depend upon their preparation and so forth. Right, and then right in your corporation, right, it will happen if some your co-workers and whoever like to have a bonus, like to have a salary raise, but what happened at the end of the year, they may not have that. And then
yeah, I actually have. Can you hear me? Yeah, I actually have a case that happened to our department right now, where a person had been there about 10, 15 years, and she expects through the year, you know, we have a conversation with what we call performance management, where we discuss the 360 feedback. You know, what your expectation, what our company expectation, what department expectation. So expectation is set up on both sides. But then sometimes the assumptions, the employee set the expectations internally that that's what they want, but then it does not met. The other side does not met. So at the end of the we just have the fiscal year turnover now. That the promotion came up and there's no promotion, no raise. So the employee was very upset emotionally, and she decided to leave the department. So that does play in corporate America quite a bit in terms of expectations. And when the expectation from your end is not met, you feel suffer. You cling to on that expectation. If that expectation is not met, then you kind of like shatter, emotionally and mentally of what you have sacrificed to do on this and it's not met. On the other hand, the employer could put a heavy stress on expectation, and they may not recognize, you have responsibility at home, care for the elderly, some kids you have to drop off in the morning, and you met at a certain time that they want you to be there. So there's a lot of that stress factor in life. But I do think that a way that it will help me in general, just by going through this learning Buddhism, and as I learn to practice more as I get older now, of the last 5-6 years, I start to realize that yes, all these factors in life will always be there, but it's the way how we react to stimulus that we'll be happy. If we choose to react, if we choose to respond to those stimulus, that is the interaction that will cause us to feel the pain or suffering. But if we choose to hear it, recognize it, process it, but don't retain it as much as, don't retain it in ourselves so much that it become a stress factor. To me, it's kind of like a meditation, like a 1 minute meditation that you always teach us. So just don't get too hang up on it. Just let the thought go through. As if you go through, you see it, you hear it, but then it kind of went by, like a cloud go by. You see everything. Don't hang on to it too long and hang on to it that much that it will drag you down. So I learned to kind of listen to my people, listen to my employer. Okay, these are the expectations. If we can meet, we have a dialogue. This is what my things. But if it's not, I just let it flow. I let it flow, so I don't get too all wound up in it. So that's how it's helped me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, William. So when your patient walk into your office, of course you give them some kind of orientation, right? But of course they may expect you to give them some kind of treatment that they can get healed right away. So if they have that expectation on you, and how could you respond to that expectation? Of course, that's what ignorance is about, right? Yeah. Before I go back to you, in my case, sometimes the students say, "Well, can they get an A?" And no, you have to do the work, right? As a teacher, we cannot promise anything. If they don't do the work, there's no way for them to get an A, right? Yeah, right, William.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So if the patient walk into your office and they expect that they get healed right away or after the session, what do you think?
Well, I think that expectations are very important. And so I try to give appropriate expectations at the beginning. I try to understand where they're coming from. Most people are pretty reasonable. Most people, by the time they come see me, because no one or very few people know what osteopathy is. So the people who find me have tried a bunch of other stuff usually. And so they don't really expect anything to help. They're just like trying one last thing. So for the most part, I don't run into that. But there are some people who are like, because I don't bill insurance, so people pay me out of pocket. So everyone's finances are different. So for some people, my rate seems like a lot. And so they have very high expectations. And so I try to give them the lay of the land going into it. I'll say, you know, for the sort of thing you're dealing with, you know, we're probably looking at this many treatments. Usually people will get improvement after first treatment. That's the majority of people, but some people don't. Sometimes we need a few more. And if we do 3 treatments and you don't get any improvement, well, then let's try something different. So I try to lay it all out for them so that we don't run into a mismatch in expectation.
Yeah, go back again. That's where ignorance comes when we encounter some situation that we don't know will happen in the future. But if we expect the future as the way we want to, that's why we bring the suffering for ourselves. But if we don't understand, we just let go and move on. You follow now, Baker, right? That's what ignorance there, right? All right, so thank you. Yes, yeah, Mr. Corey, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so I have a question about the test anxiety, because some students, you guys all know, like the ability of each person is different. But even though like as a student, we aware of like we know our ability how to do on the test. Maybe we try our hard to get the B or B plus, things like that. But not only our expectation, it's from the parents for the kids, it's from the parent expectation, and then from their ignorance, which means like I was born and then brought up in the Asian families where a lot of parents care for their face, and then they try to compare their children with other people's children. At that time, like students not only have the stress from themselves to get a good grade, but from the parents. So in that case, how could you tell to the parents to try to be mindful, like to know their children to do on the test, instead of like just forcing them to get all A or to get a good grade, so that they can compare their children to other people and then have a good face to other people?
Oh, that's a good question. This is related to other people, right? Not to about the parents, but the spouse. You expect your spouse, how they behave, how they bring income back. Or you expect your friends, you expect your co-worker and so forth, right? This is what they call relationship then. But of course, for the Asian families, most of the time, yeah, the parents expect a lot of expectation on the children. Well, I think since time is up, would you mind to keep this for our next discussion?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I will remind you.
Right. Thank you. So see you then.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.